Today we're going to consider fountain pens that seem to have fallen out of a storybook, as if they were fashioned out of fantasy and magic. Now we all know that at their essence, fountain pens are tools to write with. However, we also know that they can be so much more. They can carry our imaginations, our hopes, our dreams into some amazing places. So join me today, won't you, as I present two fountain pens and their matching inks from Ferris Wheel Press from the Harry Potter collection. These two fountain pens draw their inspirations from some of the most popular and influential fantasy works of the last 30 years. This is the Gryffindor and Ravenclaw Jewel fountain pens and their matching inks. These are from the officially licensed Warner Brothers collection, brought to you by Ferris Wheel Press. So whether you grew up reading the Harry Potter series or watching the movies, or you just appreciate an interesting, slightly magical fountain pen with some interesting characteristics, these might interest you very much. They have a bit of that dark academia about them, certainly have that feel of magic and wizardry as well. But before we dive too deeply into the pens and inks, perhaps we should bring a little context and talk about the world from which they derive. There are few people alive today that haven't heard of the Harry Potter books. They are just truly a phenomenon in the literary world. Now, the first book was published as Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in 1997 by J.K. Rowling. And then after publication, it just took off and grew into a whole mega universe of properties, from plays, musicals, and all sorts of television series and movies. The 7 novels that comprise this series sold over 600 million copies and were translated into 80 different languages. That is a phenomenal success by any measure. In fact, it is the best-selling literary series in history. And of course, Warner Brothers adapted these into a series of films that have been beloved for years. And along with this were all sorts of different toys and games and things that you can buy, because that's how it works after all, isn't it? Create a property and you can go and buy a wand or a cape or whatever it is. I've seen those stores and they're a lot of fun to look around. Now, it's also incredibly interesting to have fountain pens derived from this. I love when there's a fountain pen tie-in to anything. Whenever it offers a sort of access point for someone to come into our world, our space, our little corner of reality in the internet, I think it's fantastic, and I think it's worthy of us to take a look at and discuss together. So the reason that these pens have interesting names is that there's various houses from which the students and faculty of Hogwarts, the wizardry school, would derive from, and these pens and inks represent 2 of those houses, which we'll talk about in more detail in a few moments. So I mentioned Gryffindor, and it's known for bravery. Ravenclaw is meant for intellect, and Hufflepuff for loyalty, and Slytherin is meant for ambition. I suspect that many of you who are fans of the books and the films have imagined which house you would belong to long before a talking hat had an occasion to weigh in. Now, I suppose, is a perfect time for a stunning admission. I have never read a Harry Potter book, nor have I ever seen one of the films straight through. I've seen snippets here and there. I've picked up some things from visiting the shops. I've also seen things as I'm clicking through, and I've derived my opinions from that. My wife has read everything. She is much more familiar with this world, and in fact, she helped me with the fact checking for this video. But it is certainly an interesting idea, but I can't dive into it entirely also without addressing a certain controversy. So in recent years, J.K. Rowling has made some statements in the public about gender identity that have become incredibly controversial and polarizing for her fan base, many of whom have really identified with her as a hero for creating this kind of a universe to become part of. So it's always problematic when you alienate a good portion of the people who care and love about what you've created. But it certainly does complicate the legacy of Harry Potter. But the imaginary world of these books continues to be incredibly influential to inspire and influence design and art and other movies and films. And Ferris Wheel Press is a perfect partner for this. It almost looks like it came from Harry Potter even before it had any associations with it, which is also really interesting. I suppose then we should also start with a bit of history of Ferris Wheel Press. Ferris Wheel Press is a Canadian stationery company based in Toronto. It's founded by Raymond Yu and the designer Deborah Lau Yu. Raymond Yu leads the company as CEO, while Lau Yu serves as the brand's principal art director and the creative force behind its distinctive design style. So they started as an actual press. They made custom wedding invitations. So the word press is really ingrained in the DNA of Ferris Wheel Press. They have approached writing instruments a bit differently than other companies. They lean very heavily into illustration, into visual storytelling, and a certain sense of nostalgia. They're very good with their marketing. Their products are delightful. You always know when something is from Ferris Wheel Press just by looking at it. They just have this cohesive design language, and I think that inspires many people to be fans of the brand because they're charming. You set one of their bottles on your desk and it just makes everything seem a bit more magical. Now, I will have more to say about those bottles in a few moments. Now, they have amazing packaging and amazing design, and I think some folks think they might lean a bit too heavily into marketing. But I was speaking to Raymond Yu recently, and there's an interview between us on my channel, and he was telling me how they are striving now to produce the best fountain pen that they can, not just for those getting into the hobby, but also for those of us that are passionate about pens. And his goal is to win us all over into a fantastic writing instrument produced by him. And the Joule is one of the first attempts to really get us all involved and enjoying the brand Ferris Wheel Press. And I suppose it's my job to let you know how he did. So let's start by speaking about the House of Gryffindor. So the House of Gryffindor is characterized by boldness, by courage, and by sometimes rushing into things without thinking them through. The animal that symbolizes the House of Gryffindor is the lion. And why? I really don't know. Why isn't it a griffin? Isn't a griffin a cooler imaginary animal? I certainly think so. My favorite art museum, the Philadelphia Museum of Art symbol is the griffin. So why not the House of Gryffindor? A missed opportunity, I think. What's also important is that the colors of this house are scarlet and gold, which will certainly play into the inks and pens we're about to look at. Members of the House of Gryffindor are pretty much inclusive of every name of a character that I know from Harry Potter. These include Harry Potter himself, Ron Weasley, Hermione Granger, as well as Albus Dumbledore and Sirius Black. So let's take a look at this Joule fountain pen, probably their most elaborate design yet. It's a bit like the brush fountain pen, but elevated. I feel like the brush pen was a little twee It felt a little flimsy, it felt a little small. All of those problems for me have been addressed with this, but yet it does still speak that same dialect that is very distinctly Ferris Wheel Press. You have that rounded shape. You have a bit of heft in this one though. It's got a nice weight to it. It's at least 30 grams by feel. The cap has that protective ring, which I love. This one is gold plated and it has, I'm assuming, a spell on it, or it could be someone's name. But it sure is interesting, and if you're into Harry Potter, I'm sure you would know what it means. Now, one of the things I've always loved about Ferris Wheel Press pens are their grips. They're metal, but they've always been engraved with interesting things. These all pertinent to Harry Potter. Very beautiful, very grippy, and just really interesting. I rather wish that more pen producers would do interesting grips like this. It's very, very well done. Now, this is a cartridge converter fountain pen. The converter's fine. Not much I can say about that. The nib is actually very nice. We'll get more into that as time goes on. This one is stainless steel number 6, gold plated. It only comes in a 0.45 of a millimeter width, which roughly puts it as a Western fine or a Japanese medium. In my writing with it, it does feel quite fine, but occasionally I get a little bit of line variations, which is very nice. It may be frustrating for some that it only comes in one nib size, but I think if you're buying this pen, you're buying it more for the associations with Harry Potter. So the pen is named the Joule, and it's a Joule as in that unit of energy to symbolize a creative spark of inspiration, something I can admire and feel a little inspired by myself. It also has that homonym with the other Joule, which also can relate, I suppose. It could be a jewel in your eye. It's not particularly jewel-like, but it's certainly meant to be that energy unit of measurement, which is kind of interesting. So this pen is lacquer over a brass base. This particular one is that gorgeous deep crimson, holds the light really well. It's finely polished. It seems very well made. I haven't had any problems with the nib drying out. The cap seems tight enough. It's a screw cap. It's pretty heavy duty. You have metal threads going on a metal cap, which is pretty nice. I suppose you could seal that up pretty tight with some plumber's tape, but very nice in its balance too. I'm not sure whether or not you could post this if you wanted to. I certainly wouldn't advise it. Whenever you see metal threads going onto a lacquer body, I don't think that's a good idea at all, unless you don't care about scratches and gouges and whatnot. If you're brave enough, then post away. So it's very nice weight. I'm going to resist any sort of magical wand comparisons because that's just too obvious, and I think you expect and deserve more from me. I suppose another thing I should add is you might want to be careful that your desk is level, or wherever you are, when you lay this down, because it could simply roll away. There's no clip or anything to hold it in place for you. So yes, just be very careful with that if you want to keep it pristine. And the price, oh yes, the price. This pen is $225 at the time of filming. That's $45 more than the base model. However, that is for the Harry Potter licensing and design and all the design cues from Harry Potter. So is it worth an extra $45? Probably. If you're into Harry Potter, it's probably really exciting to have an ink that matches the pen that can put you in the mind of the books and make you feel like you have a little bit of that magical life yourself. Is that worth an extra $45? Probably. $225 is a bit expensive for a steel nib fountain pen, but not extremely so. These days, you've probably noticed that even steel nibs are itching up in price, and gold nib pens are getting almost unaffordable. But nevertheless, considering that I bought my ST DuPont for $225, although secondhand, and that has a steel nib, you know, you have to kind of weigh these values however you can justify it for yourself. And I think if you're a Harry Potter fan, the only way you're justifying it is that this is the Harry Potter pen, and you must have it. And I understand that completely. I'm passionate about my fandoms too. So what are my fandoms? Certainly Doctor Who. I'm huge into Doctor Who. I'm a huge In Our Time fan. That is very niche. It's a podcast I cannot get enough of. Grand Designs is probably my favorite television show. I absolutely adore that. So yes, there are nerdy things I'm into as well, and it's a big part of the enjoyment of my life. So Ravenclaw, and I'm sure I've probably said Ravensclaw a few times in this video, so just forgive me for that. But Ravenclaw has an entirely different temperament for its house. And by the way, the symbol of Ravenclaw is, of course, it's obvious, an eagle. It's kind of baffling. Why is it an eagle? Why is it not a raven? Wouldn't a raven be perfect? It's a magical creature. But no, it's an eagle. I can't figure it out. I'm sure you're watching this and you know why. So why don't you let me know in the comments? I do love what this house symbolizes. It's about intellect, curiosity, and scholarship. That's all in my wheelhouse. The colors of this house are blue and bronze, which are really interesting, a really beautiful mix. I like that. Now, I looked up some characters from the books that are members of this house, and I didn't know any of them. So the Ravenclaw Jewel fountain pen is a pretty striking blue. It's very sapphire. It has nice depth and incredible color saturation. It has a much more subdued metal tone. It's more like a pewter rather than a pure bronze. So the nib itself looks like white gold, kind of chrome plating, of course, and it has all those touches as the other one has, all the magical elements to it associated with the house. But that color, I have to say that this blue is so striking. It's really something when you see it. And I'm really impressed with it. I think out of both of them, and I usually like scarlets more, but this blue is hard to beat. And each pen comes with a real leather carrying sleeve that also has the crest of the house embossed and says Ferris Wheel Press on the back, which is a nice touch. Let's talk a little bit about their inks and their amazing magical bottles. So these bottles look as if they are from some magical realm, as if they were found in some ancient abandoned apothecary. Maybe perhaps that these bottles were used for mixing the chemicals of alchemy. Whatever it is, it just has those kind of interesting associations, very steeped in dark academia and magic. Let's face it, just pure magic. Now, the Harry Potter edition kind of raises the bar. You get this incredibly beautiful cap with a lion and not a griffin, beautifully presented here. Incredible detail, really nice carving and casting, just very, very well done. It does make it a bit top heavy, which has always been my issue with these bottles. They're very top heavy, but they are beautiful. And you set this down on your desk and it just elevates it and just gives it this magical sense. It's really, really well done. So I do love this as much as I kind of fear it, especially when I'm filling my pen and I'm in fear of it spilling onto my clothing. And I know there are bases and things that you can either make or buy, but I'm a simple guy. I just like to fill it up easily, but it is magical and I'm really glad I own it. And I can certainly understand the appeal if you are a fan of Harry Potter. Having the ink that matches the pen is always fun. Whatever pen it is, if it has a matching ink, you sort of feel like you need to have it. And I suppose if you buy these both together, you're into it for about $270. But for a devoted person to any kind of fandom, I suppose that's the cost of entry. and worth it, but it's really well done. It's really pretty. I'm really glad I own this, and I can say a few things about this ink as we get ready to write with this pen. So let's talk a little bit about the inks. I love both of them, and I love them because they seem to sort of refute some of what my previous criticisms of Ferris Wheel Press inks are, and that is that they're often too light and a little bit too sparkly for my personal preferences. So certainly sometimes Ferris Wheel Press inks can be almost like watercolors, and I think they're fantastic if you're doing art, and less so if you are someone who is looking to write and have your handwriting be seen and to last for a very long time. Both of these seem very, very saturated. Now they both have shimmer, and because I'm me, I didn't shake them because I didn't really want the shimmer in my writing. I prefer to let that all settle, fill it from the top, and I'm just a bit happier myself. I rarely embrace shimmer, but I'm sure those of you into Harry Potter might want a little magic into your ink and your writing, so I can certainly understand if you embrace it, and it's there if you would like to. But the blue is incredibly saturated. It's a very, very nice shade of blue that's just perfect for every situation. And the crimson as well is very nice. It won't be replacing writer's blood or ox blood for me anytime soon, but it certainly matches the pen and has a very nice expression of the color. So I do enjoy that. But okay, let's now talk about the writing experience with these Joule fountain pens and what I think. Okay. So these nibs both write very similarly. They both draw a similar, fairly fine and very consistent line. These are not overly wet pens, and personally I do prefer more of a very flowy wet pen. Some of my pens, you might say, how do you even control that? How do you enjoy that, Hemingway? But I do. And I'm thinking out loud of some of my Pelicans, my M800, which is very wet, and my Schaefer Legacy, which is incredibly wet and also incredibly smooth. These feel a bit restrained by comparison, but they're not dry by any means. They feel very precise and very deliberate. And I do get a bit of line variation. I find that it flows enough that on your curves and your dips, you get a bit more ink there and a bit more saturation, and it makes my handwriting look very nice. So I enjoy that and I like it, and it inspires me to write more. And I think that's the point of both of these pens and inks. So it writes very well. In fact, I haven't had any issues with it. I've been carrying it around for about a week, and in the hand feels very balanced. I feel like I have nice control. The grip feels nice and grippy. It doesn't get away from me. The slightly restrained ink flow helps me actually to write with a bit more intention. So the writing experience overall is pretty incredible. I do feel that this is more of a desk pen. It's not that easy to carry around if you're in the office or something. You sort of grasp it in your hand. You're not going to clip it to your placard or to the edge of a book because it doesn't have a clip. And you have to be careful how you put it down because it could roll away. So it is much more of an intentional pen, but I think that's sort of the ethos of Ferris Wheel Press. It's an intentional writing experience. You're going to open your journal, uncap your pen, very ritualistic, deliberately thinking about it while you write. I think that is wonderful. I think we all need to slow down a bit and enjoy the whole writing process while we do it. So I don't have a criticism there. There's really nothing I can take off of these fountain pens or these inks. I'll say they're perfectly competent fountain pens, and I think they fit well in their price range and what they offer for the intellectual properties of Harry Potter. I don't think that this is a pen that I'm super enthusiastic about, and it's, you know, I'm going to set aside my Bohems and my Mont Blanc 149 and the other pens that I use on a daily basis, but I do like it. I'm very happy that I own these complimentary pen and ink sets, which are always fun. Even something like a Mont Blanc Egyptomania, it's fun to have that ink. So having the one for something like Harry Potter, I imagine, is very exciting for people. Ferris Wheel Press has built its reputation on writing instruments that treat imagination as part of the experience. And these fountain pens certainly continue that approach. They take recognizable elements from a well-known literary world and turn them into tools for everyday writing. Whether you find yourself drawn to the bold character of Gryffindor or the quieter intellectual tone of Ravenclaw, the Joule pen shows how design and storytelling can really coalesce in something as seemingly simple as a fountain pen. But see, once again, here's the point of my entire channel. You've heard me say this. From a fountain pen, we can go anywhere and everywhere. And that's what's amazing about fountain pens, isn't it? We write, we think, we put our thoughts into words, we exchange them with other people, or we store them for generations. Our lives have a river of ink running through them. So here it is as an expression of Harry Potter, something that many of us are very passionate about. It's just fun and interesting to hold that in your hand, to see it manifest in something tangible, something that you can write with and have a sense of that magical world, and perhaps realize that there are opportunities for magic, for change, for connections in your own lives that will make your own life a hero's journey. And I guess when you think about it, a fountain pen usually is the most magical item in the room. So what do you think of the Joule fountain pen from Ferris Wheel Press? What do you think of Harry Potter? What do you think of Ferris Wheel Press in general? Please let me know in the comments. I always love to hear from you. The conversation never ends in the comments, so thank you. And if you'd like to support the channel even more, I have membership available, and you could use your Harry Potter pen to write a letter to someone in the Pen Pal group if you're Illuminati or Cognoscenti member levels. I'd love to have you behind the scenes. So I make new videos like this one each week, and I have a live show as well. So I can promise you one thing, we will see each other again very, very soon, further up the road. So take care of yourself. What are those what are those spells like expectiamos, vomitatos? Ooh, that would be a terrible spell. Impatientatos. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know.